Thank you so much, everyone. Well, Paula Gavin is characteristically kind in everything she said, and anyone who's worked with her knows that she is a warm and spirited force of nature, getting people to do good things. And I had that experience in my last job as public advocate. Paula did an extraordinary job running our fund for public advocacy and getting people to donate and get involved and support us in ways they never imagined they would. But persuasion has a great impact in our lives. So Paula, thank you, and we are thrilled for all you are doing now as the Chief Service Officer for this city, and want to thank you for that. Let's give Paula a round of applause. Paula, you have to tell me, I think I may be feeling Catholic guilt that I interrupted the panel. Can you tell me how many Hail Marys I need to say, or? None. Okay, I've been absolved. You saw it here. Or as the Pope once said, who am I to judge? See, Paula's good. Thank you. I want to thank all of you for joining us for the New York City Service Summit. There is such talent and energy and capacity in this room, and you represent so much more in all the organizations that you work with. And this is so important because the impact you make and the impact all the people you represent make and all the people you involve make is huge in this city. We all know the needs are endless, but you organize people to have a profound impact and to do things that we in government can't do as well as we'd like to, and we depend on you so deeply. So I'm thrilled that we are celebrating your work, showing the sense of partnership we feel with you, and obviously today talking about ways to improve and support the work more effectively. But I have to tell you, because I am focused on a more equitable New York City, I see your work as entirely allied with everything we're doing at City Hall. And I'll speak in a moment about some of the challenges we face and what we're trying to do and how I think your work fits crucially into it. I do want to also thank Sheena Wright, President and CEO of the United Way, for co-hosting this Service Summit, and of course Jennifer Robb for hosting us here in this wonderful facility. Let's give them both a round of applause. We, in this administration, we started against a backdrop that was sobering, and I've talked about it a lot in the last year, but it still sort of takes time to sink in. You know, a city study in 2013, then again in 2014, confirmed that about 46% of New Yorkers are at or near the poverty level. That is very hard to take in on first blush. It doesn't fit with so much of what we hope for and would like to see. It certainly doesn't fit with everyone's everyday experience, but when you drill down, poverty level for a family of 4 is under 25,000. 46% of the city either at or below that level, or just at 50% more. So that would mean, for example, a family of 4 living in the mid to high 30,000s in terms of income. And everyone in this room can do the math quickly and understand in a city like this, that's immediately taken up by rent alone, let alone some of the highest cost of living everywhere in the country. And all this against a backdrop of a changing economy, higher educational standards necessary to succeed in the economy. This is a time when the stress that's been put on people, economically and otherwise, really has no parallel in our previous history, except some real focal points like the Great Depression. And the difference here is that we're in a more structural crisis. The inequalities we faced didn't come on as a sudden shock and then potentially were lifted. This is something that's been decades in the making. But the effect on everyday New Yorkers is profound. The decline of wages and earning power, the decline of the middle class has left a huge imprint that it's up to all of us to address. So we're living in a time of an inequality crisis. And I like to remind all of us that this is the issue of our times. This is the challenge of our times. This is what all of us in each of our own ways have to confront, because if we don't confront it, you end up with an ever more stratified society. You end up with a social fabric that starts to tear. You end up with a threat that really has to be thought of in terms of security terms and even national security terms. If we don't have a strong and cohesive society and one where there's really opportunity across the board, we're not the same city, we're not the same country. We in the government are trying at the local level to address this with every tool we have, trying to do a number of things to raise wages and benefits for hardworking people, like paid sick leave, living wage plans. We're trying to get the minimum wage increased at the state level and then hopefully go farther here at the city level. We're trying to use tools like our plan to create 200,000 units of affordable housing. That's enough to, if we do it right over 10 years, that's enough to house 500,000 New Yorkers. We're trying to do it educationally with pre-K for all New York City children over the next few years, after-school programs for middle school kids. All of these pieces contribute towards re-equalizing. They contribute towards opening up opportunity again. And think about, for hardworking New Yorkers, and particularly for parents, each and every one of these pieces could benefit them, whether it's raising wages and benefits, whether it's affordable housing, whether it's knowing to get full day, free, high quality pre-K for their child or guaranteed after school for their middle school child. All of these things lighten the burden and give people a chance at a decent lifestyle. So that's what we're working on all the time. But we know, even with, I would say, some of the most aggressive efforts in the nation to confront these problems, we know there's still a lot more to be done. And you are such crucial allies, because every organization here and the reach you have and the volunteers you mobilize and apply to the problems of this city makes a huge impact. And we're blessed in New York City to have such a strong spirit of volunteerism, to have such a strong nonprofit and community group infrastructure. Someone said to me a few years ago, someone I thought quite learned on the topic, if you look at New York City versus some other cities in the country, and thinking about another of the challenges we face everywhere in the country, the challenge of public safety, they said, in a lot of other cities, there are rampant and sadly growing gang problems. In New York City, we have a challenge, but a challenge that is confronted each and every day effectively by the NYPD, but also by thousands and thousands of professionals and volunteers through community-based organizations who work with young people and do it coherently, and it creates a web all across New York City. So whereas unfortunately in some other parts of the country, young people don't have that helping hand as readily available, that tutoring, that recreation program, that mentoring, here in the city there's so much greater chance that a young person can have access to something like that, and that is so much because of the work you do. And it makes a huge tangible and material influence on the young people, on their families, and on our broader society. There's a lot of passion in this city for volunteerism. There's a lot of passion for giving back and making an impact. It's part of our DNA, and it's a great part of our DNA. And I want to just give you a couple of examples of the power that volunteers have. Two recent CUNY grads I want to point to, and I don't actually know if they're in the room or not. So if you are, say you're in the room. Jalissa Lima and Aaron Lejean. If not, I'm going to tell you all about them. Jalissa was raised in Brooklyn by Ecuadorian parents, first in her family to go to college at CUNY. Aaron, also born and raised in Brooklyn, daughter of Caribbean immigrants, and both were eager to take what they had learned and the advantages that they had experienced and give back. So they signed up for the NYC Civic Corps last year, and it's the AmeriCorps program run by NYC Service. Volunteers spend a year working with nonprofits and city agencies. And both of them worked as assistant teachers with the Center for Alternative Sentencing and Employment Services. It's a nonprofit that helps young New Yorkers in trouble with the law get out of trouble and get on the right path. So they tutored some at-risk youth, and as they were going through the experience, they started to not only feel a great sense of connection and compassion and support for these young people, they started to notice some things that may not be working the way they needed to. And they noticed in particular that these young people were struggling with the new and more rigorous requirements for the high school equivalency test. It's a topic Paula knows well because she spent a lot of time helping young people get to take that test. So the standards were going up, and young people were struggling, but there wasn't a new protocol in place. So Aaron and Jalissa took it upon themselves to create a solution. They created a 5-week course designed to build the confidence of these young people and to train them in the planning and the organization and the research they needed. And it became a critical piece a new effort to help students obtain that high school equivalency diploma. It's not just volunteerism in this sort of drive-by sense. A lot of, and I'm again preaching to the converted, a lot of the volunteerism we see in this city is structural. It's people finding solutions that become lasting models and make a huge difference and are passed on to the next generation of volunteers, and that's particularly important and valuable. So the examples of Aaron and Jalissa are just two individuals, but they really exemplify so much of what service efforts achieve and so much of what it does in the evolution of those who serve, making them think and act more deeply. Nationally, to put this in perspective, AmeriCorps currently has nearly 600,000 applications for 80,000 positions. There's such a yearning to be involved, and yet, sadly, nationally, we're accommodating so few of those that we could. That's why I want to express my appreciation for everyone involved with the Franklin Project, because it takes what we've learned from the AmeriCorps model and nationally works to build it out with support from government, business, nonprofits, and go farther than the current model is going and reach more young people. And the goal is one I commend. It's a very ambitious goal of reaching 1 million young Americans each year and unleashing all of that energy and creativity and impact and idealism to profoundly affect this nation. And certainly we applaud everyone involved with the Franklin Project. And I also want to take a moment to applaud someone else who's been a real national leader on the question of service and pushing all over this country for us to make service more fundamental to all we do, and that's Lori Tisch. I think Lori's in the room. Lori, there you are. You're very much in the room. Thank you, Lori, for all you've done. Let's give her a round of applause. So what the Franklin Project seeks to do, what NYC Civic Corps does, they're amazing. The structural possibilities here are extraordinary. But I also remind people there are so many different forms of service, some where people make a year-long deep commitment and some where people only give a few hours a week. And that helps too, because I always like to look at everything we do in public life through the prism of one person, one family, one child, one senior. For that individual so deeply affected, even by the volunteer who only has a few hours to give, it's everything they could ask for. And if it's changing one life for the better, it's already meant a lot. So we appreciate every form of volunteerism. And then if you happen to be in a place like New York City, and Paula can attest to this, if you add up a few hours here and a few hours there, and you add up a week here and a week there and a month here and a month there, it starts to add up to millions and millions of hours because it's New York City. And it makes a huge impact. It makes our parks more beautiful, helps our young people, helps those who are hungry to be served in food pantries. So many people who are in times of crisis are served by volunteers. After Sandy, Sandy was an extraordinary moment, a painful moment, but a moment where you saw volunteerism at its most profound, where some of the first and best help to reach people came from volunteers and local community organizations and ad hoc efforts. Some of the most lasting efforts to help volunteers to help those in need came from volunteers who stuck with folks even when attentions turned to a lot of other issues in the civic discourse. The volunteers stuck with the families in need, and it made a huge, huge difference. So I'll finish by saying a thank you to everyone in the room and a reminder that all of us, we do have to proselytize a bit in the work we do. We have to remind people that there is no such thing as meaningless volunteerism. There's no such thing as a small amount of volunteering. Every bit helps. Every bit makes a difference. We want people to give of themselves, and there's no quantitative perfect standard. It's whatever people can do. But it all helps, and it all helps us as we're trying to make some of the changes to address people in need. Every additional hour I consider a blessing for this city. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Everybody can be great because anybody can serve." And I think that epitomizes why the work you do is so important and the doors you're opening for those you're serving and those you're giving the opportunity to serve. Thank you for what you do.